People who have gone out for a pack of cigarettes and never went back to your family. What happened after you left? Serious. When I was 16, I moved out without telling my stepdad, but my mom was in on it. And I just moved in with my grandparents. I left on a Friday. Got all my stuff and just 2 trips. I was told he didn't even notice I was gone the first weekend. He was pretty mad once he figured it out, but it was all mostly a non-event. Everything turned out okay for me. It will have been 21 years, this September. When I was 18, I moved out from my abusive father. I was commuting to college at the time and I had morning classes, so the night before I packed my car with as much of my stuff as I could and set off. One of my professors that I regularly talked to after class noticed that my car was full of clothes and asked if everything was okay. Over lunch I explained my situation, and he offered to take me in. I had already made arrangements to live with my mother. After my classes for the day were over, I went home for the first time since I was a child to live with my mother. I slept on the couch for months before getting my own bed, and we didn't always have the money to eat, but we made it work. I have seen my father one time since then because he swore to me that he had changed. That night he proceeded to get wasted and tried to put his hands on me. I haven't seen him since, and I have no regrets. I was 10 years old when my mom and dad split up. We had been expecting it, but I didn't know that my mom had packed up suitcases for herself, my sister, and I. One day we went to school like everything was normal, and went to my mom's parents after school. It wasn't unusual for us to have dinner there. But then mom sat us down and told us we'd be staying there for a while. Ended up being 6 years before we got our own place. I never got to go back to my bedroom again. My dad got remarried and his wife's daughter moved in and repainted my room. When I had to visit them, I slept on the couch while she slept in my room. I hadn't started a family of my own yet, but I was engaged to my ex who I just ended up ghosting after a few years. It was several years ago and he had to move back to Tokyo for his job. We met in the US while he was an expat, so he asked me to come live with him. Moved, met the family, all that stuff. Then, one day I came down with the flu and was miserable and was so weak I couldn't even walk myself to the toilet. He was trying to come onto me several times that day and I kept refusing because of obvious reasons. Then I was in the middle of sleeping and he started to take off my clothes and have sex with me while I was sleeping after already refusing it to him. I woke up and was like WTF and made him stop. Then I pretended to be asleep till he left for work the next morning, packed my and left. Dropped the key off at concierge and hurried out of that building in a huge panic. Never spoke to him again. Cut off all contact immediately. I booked hotels for a couple of weeks and met my, now, husband. Growing up, my mother was pretty abusive, mostly emotional, to me and my little sister. This included basically fabricating a false reality that my dad had divorced my mother and left her penniless, then left the state, as well as isolating us from other family members on the basis that they were bad people. Probably the worst thing she did, which I still deal with today, was turning me and my little sister against each other in these fucked up scenarios. Basically her drug and or alcohol induced rage of the day would always fall on one of us. However, whoever told on the other sibling that they did something to anger my mother would face her wrath and the other sibling would have a brief respite. This went on since I was 8 or so. I grew up hating my sister. After I got older, I found my best friend in high school and he helped me understand just how fucked up my situation was, given that I assumed that's how family life was since we were so isolated, no TV or internet, and that my mother was also a teacher at both my elementary and middle school. She had control over everything. At 18 I left my house and moved in with my friend. However, it wasn't forever. He was joining the army at the end of school and I had to think of someone to stay with. So I found my dad, states away. I took a long shot and asked him if I could stay with him. He accepted. I got everything I owned in the world, which fit in a truck bed, and while most kids were going off to college, I was going to start over in a completely different place with a father I didn't know. It turned out my dad was a decent guy. He wasn't a saint by any means, but leagues better than my mother. He helped me get a driver's license and eventually helped me join the military, where I have just finished my first year in. I haven't seen my little sis in 2 years though. And she still hates me. Even though she's 18, she hasn't left her mother, and since I left she's become closer with her. I regret not trying harder to be there for her every day. But as for my life now, I have 3 years left in the military, then I hope to go to college and become a pilot. None of which I ever thought of when I was living under my mother's roof. Edit. Holy fuck. This blew up so much from what I expected initially. Thanks so much for everyone's kind words and advice. Just knowing that other people are out there rooting for me has lifted my spirits so much, and now I really have to make it hahaha. I didn't go out for cigarettes, but I pulled a similar stunt. My mom is abusive and I had no spine, so I told her I was going to move in with my dad for the summer. I said I would be back before the end of August. After I moved in with my dad, I got my state ID. My mom didn't want me to have any kind of ID, and I finally got my driver's permit a few weeks later. I felt bad for lying at the time, but now I'll know if I didn't lie to her I would have never gotten out of there. I would be stuck living on a shitty little hobby farm with a woman who did everything in her power to tear me down and hurt me. I'm proud of you. I did something similar. But I just moved across the country and didn't tell anyone where I'm going or my new address. It still hurts. But I don't regret my decision. I hope you don't either. Ultimately, it helps when I hear someone is proud of me and what I did. So, I thought I'd pass it on to you as well. This is my throwaway. Got married right out of high school. Everything was going well, but we were young and both were our first partners. Came home early one day and walked in on my wife with another man. Standard insanity ensued, followed by her begging for forgiveness, and we went to months of counseling. Everything seemed well and dandy. She seemed like a totally different woman and couldn't live without me. One day I log into our desktop PC and her Facebook is loaded and there are multiple messages, and I had to look. I found exactly what I knew I would find. It crushed me, but I acted like nothing happened. That weekend I packed up my favorite clothes and belongings that meant a lot to me and snuck them to the car. Sunday evening I said, hey, I'm going to take the dogs to the dog park and hike for a few hours. When I left, I texted our neighbor to see if anyone showed up at the house. She replied pretty quickly that a male visitor was by very quickly. I told her goodbye and the dogs and I just drove. I had a decent savings and thought, fuck it, start off somewhere new, and that is what I did. My ex-wife didn't even try and contact me until around lunchtime the next day. When I didn't respond, she blew me up with photos and videos of her with multiple men and about how bad of a lover I was. It fucked me up, but I just kept trucking. I ended up in a smaller town where I saw someone was hiring for my trade. Years later, I remarried to the best human ever. I went home not long ago and my mom posted a picture of us at a gathering. My ex hit up my Facebook and asked if we could meet for a cup of coffee. She would like some closure. I obviously would like as well. I have to say, for all the resentment and hatred I had toward this woman, our conversation was pleasant and I felt better after we talked. She understood why I left. She apologized deeply, many times, and didn't try to blame me for anything. After an hour and a little bit of tears, awkward as hell in public, hahaha, she asked if it was okay to get a hug. We hugged and said our goodbyes. Once I got home I told my wife about the visit and she got awkward for a few minutes. She left the room and I didn't follow. I thought, oh, I'm sleeping on the couch tonight. 5 minutes later, she came back crying and just gave me the biggest hug ever. She told me she forgot what I went through and she was sorry and glad our life is good. Closing. I left a terrible human for the best human ever. For us it was that he went out for milk. Dad told me as the eldest surviving kid I was the man of the house until he got back, so it was my obligation to help defend, take care of them for him until he came back. He never came back. That's all for today's video. Hope you guys liked it. If you liked the video, subscribe. If you want to support the channel, the best thing you can do is simply watch the videos. But if you really want to see the channel thrive, subscribe, like, comment, add to favorites, add to playlist, and share with friends. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Reddit and Insta. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you with tomorrow's upload.